Hi
Okay.
guys, Dr. Hampton here. We're already chuckling because today I have a very good friend here, Ede Fox, and I'm really happy to be here with her on Can We Talk? And we've had a chance to talk a lot, and I think we'll be talking a lot over the next year or so because we're thinking about how can we work together to help spread the healing message of metabolic health, whether it's through carb restriction, low carb as a general theme, of course, as carnivore. And as you know, Ede Fox is also known as the Black Carnivore. And when I need to watch a podcast or a YouTube video, a lot of times I find myself on her channel. I like her guests, I like her approach, and she's been a great partner in getting this message out. So Ede, I'm so happy to have you here on Can We Talk? And let's start talking. You doing okay today?
I am. Thank you so much for having me. And I love being on your channel. And I've really enjoyed the content that you provide, and it is so helpful. I mean, so many people in the Black Carnivore community, are always referencing the stuff that they're learning on your channel. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And it's a partnership I've enjoyed. And I'm transitioning from low carb to keto and maybe even carnivore, and still learning, still growing. And a lot of my patients ask questions about the carnivore diet, and I just think it's important that we provide some basic foundational elements. So part of what I want to do today, and really most of what I want to do today, is just talk about the carnivore diet. You've obviously embraced that, and you're leading others with that diet. So let's talk a little bit about it. And I particularly think this is cool because we're recording this on Christmas Eve. And what's cool about that is that when the new year starts, many people are going to want to do some things different. And many have not even considered carnivore because it seems so extreme, right? It's like it's the opposite of vegan. And what we want to do today is make people more comfortable with carnivore if they were to choose it. The biggest challenge, however, is those old belief systems, and it takes a lot of courage to choose a diet that most clinicians are not aware of or have concerns about. And for me personally, even I struggle sometimes in terms of reducing the vegetables in my diet. And I think that that's a struggle many people will face. Thankfully, I'm an evidence based guy. And when I look at least keto and low carb, I know for sure that those dietary patterns are safe. And when I look at my patients who do carnivore, they do really well. When I look at their metabolic markers, when I look at their blood pressure, and I look at what's going on with their diabetes, and all those things, they do really well. So I feel very comfortable with carnivore, although we have much research to do. So in terms of the courage it takes, talk a little bit about how you were able to overcome the fears and the concerns that would exist with a diet that's so different, like a carnivore diet.
Well, honestly, it took me 10 years. So I first heard about carnivore in 2007, but I did not try it until 2018 or the very end of
Wow.
2017. So it took me a long time. And, I've always been a person who, cared about health. Like I paid attention to it. I followed, I looked for the latest information. When they said, you have to eat your super vegetables, I ate the garlic, I ate the broccoli, I looked for the kale. I tried to
Hmm.
eat the rainbow. I tried to get every color. And, so I did all the things. And so when I first came upon this group that was talking about eating, nothing but meat, I was like, oh my God, you people are crazy. I stayed in the forum for a while, like reading, because I was so like, I could not believe it. And I stayed in it for a while. I was reading and I, thought about it. I could not bring myself to try it. And I can only kick myself now because I imagine the healing that I would have, if I had started 10 years ago. But I get it. It's hard. Like we are talking about doing like the exact opposite of what we're being told. We're
Hmm.
talking about doing what all of the authorities in our lives are telling us will lead to, heart disease, cancer, and death. And
Yeah.
so I get it that it's hard. And so that's why I say to people, like I do these 21-day carnivore challenges, and
Mhm.
that gives you an opportunity to try it for a short period of time. So no matter what, you're not gonna drop dead in 21 days. So even if you think that this will lead to a heart attack, you can do it for 21 days and see how you feel. Now, 21 days is, not enough to turn you into a supermodel, but
Mhm.
it is enough time for you to start feeling better, for your mood to improve, for your skin to improve, for your cognition to get better, to start to tighten up, to start to lose some fat, and certainly to lose a lot of inflammation. And I think that once you start having these kinds of global improvements, it really that causes you to question what you've been told. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe that you could improve in like 30 different areas and still somehow what you're doing is deadly. Like
Right.
you won't get better all over your body if it's really killing you. So,
Yeah.
once you start having that, then I think people start to question, "Well, is this really bad? My doctor said it, but I feel 1,000 times better, so I don't know," you know? And then I think that's what allows you to really start investigating and thinking about and deciding whether this is right for you. But I think, people don't believe how amazing you will feel following even a keto diet. You improve so much in terms of your mood and your energy. And then on a carnivore diet, to me, it's like 1,000 times better. And no one believes it because, why would you until you experience it? But once you start to experience it, it's like, oh, okay, this is
Yeah.
amazing. I want some more of this.
That's right.
So, you just got to dip your toe in. I am
That's
not
right.
requiring that, like, this is not a club. There's no, dues. There's no cards or nothing like that. You come and go as you please. Like, this is about you deciding to try something that is going to really help your health or, not. But this is up to you and you don't have to do it forever. Just try it.
Hey, I work for a large health system, and Advocate Aurora is probably the 10th largest health system for population based health. So, in order for me to have integrity, just like others, like Dr. Eric Westman, who's at Duke, you have to have a certain approach. So, I try to take an approach that's evidence based. I know when I first met you, it was clear that you were looking at the research because you every once in a while would quote a study, or maybe you were hearing something from like an Amber or O'Hearn, who's a well-known carnivore. And so everybody listening to this, understand we're not kooks. We literally look at science. We're not biased. We just look at what it is. We try to look at randomized controlled trials if they're available, and that's the highest level of evidence. And what we're finding is that what we're doing makes a lot of sense. So I really appreciate that approach. I insist that everybody listening even double check what we're saying, double check what we're recommending, because I think you want to always have a little bit of a skeptic approach, a little bit of a cynical approach, and say, I trust Dr. Hampton, I trust the Black Carnivore, but let me kind of dot my I's and cross my T's. So make sure we do that. So let's kind of help those with the basics at a high level. I want to start with the basics of eating carnivore, and obviously, and I think starting with the animal perspective is important. So I just want to get a basic understanding for people listening when it comes to eating animals, right? Is there any types of animals? Is there any limits? Or what do you tell people when they say, I want to be carnivore, and they say, and then they say, what do I eat? So how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I start with eat the meat that you like, so
Hmm.
whatever it is you liked, eat that.
What do you
And
like, A Day? What's your favorite meat? What's your favorite meat?
Beef is really my favorite, so
Yeah.
it really always was. So that comprises like 95% of my,
Right.
of my total menu, and then
That's
I
right.
add in pieces of other things. And when I
Yeah.
was first starting, I found it difficult to figure out like what to eat, because when I was growing up, my grandmother said, "Okay, it's important to have a meat, a starch, and a vegetable on your plate." And so I was thinking, okay,
Right.
so if I'm not having a vegetable or a starch, do I make two other meats to make my
Right.
sides? Or, like, what do I do? So it was hard to wrap my head around like having one thing on the plate, So it took some time, but but that's a great way to have like a side, of like some other type of meat. And honestly speaking, like there is a difference between different types of meats.
Hmm.
And the reason when you go on like any social media, a lot of people are like, who are all these crazy carnivores who are always screaming beef?
Hmm.
And the reason people scream beef is that you feel better when you eat beef. I mean, there
Hmm.
is a very big difference. And there are definitely people who come to carnivore and who want to do it with chicken and fish, and it's just not going to work. People
Hmm.
just don't feel as good that way. So you don't have to, if you like have a reason why you don't want to eat beef, you don't have to eat beef, but you have to eat ruminant animals. And so a
Hmm.
ruminant animal is, they have a rumen, and it's a way of, they have a specific way of digesting food that, turns turns the food they eat into very high quality beef or high
Hmm.
quality meat. And,
Hmm.
pork and chicken and fish don't digest food that way. So they don't produce as high a quality meat. So if you don't want to eat beef, you can always eat lamb, you can eat goat, um, elk, bison, venison. Those are all other, ruminant animals. But in America, beef is the most ubiquitous, and so it is, the most affordable. If you live in Australia, then you're going to be talking about lamb. It depends on what country you're in. But those are all good choices. So if you make that, the bulk of what you're eating, and then add in other stuff. So I like to have surf and turf sometimes. So I'll have
Hmm.
like, sauteed scallops with my steak. Or I might have buffalo chicken wings, and I will have like some meatballs, or made from beef. So I try not to have a meal that doesn't have beef in it, because I know I'm not going to be as satisfied if I
Hmm.
skip that.
Cool. I'm definitely a steak guy, and it's hard to imagine this is true, but I actually think I could eat steak every day. Like, and I think the reason why is because of what you said earlier. You said, well, people feel better, right? It's like the perfect elimination diet. So whenever I eat animals, and I'm assuming these animals are prepared properly, no flour, no cornmeal, no barbecue sauce and things like that, right? Um, I just don't feel anything other than better. And then my beautiful older son came back for school, and he prepared, because we're not carnivore yet, we're just kind of maybe one vegetable a day kind of thing, and so he made cabbage, right? And I knew cabbage was a little bit of a problem, but you spend like 3 days trying to recover from that delicious tasting. It was delicious. Shout out to Brandon Hampton for the nice meal. But then, like, for 3 days, you're like suffering. And it's not horrible, it's just a little upset stomach. Of course, cabbage and Brussels sprouts give you gas. And you're like, who wants to feel that way? You don't get any of that when you eat the steak. It just doesn't happen. So for me, that's a logical way of thinking. Oh, if it doesn't bother me, eat more of that. Things that bother me, eat less of that. But we live in a society where we're being told, even if it bothers you, take some Beano, but you got to eat it because you need those phytonutrients and you need the fiber. And it's like this message that you hear over and over again, yet it's not logical. So I think it's important that people not only hear that message, but also understand there's a ton of ways to prepare meat. There's a ton of meats that you haven't even tried. And I guess going to that theme, um, your thoughts on, we always hear that organ meats are particularly nice to have. I just ordered the liver chips by the Aurelius Carnivore guy. I'm going to
Hmm.
try it out. Have you tried those yet?
I have not, but
Yes,
I've tried other liver chips.
liver chips, and
Didn't
yours
work for me.
didn't work for you.
Mm.
Well, I'm actually going to check them out, and I'll probably even do kind of a review because I think that's helpful. But talk to me a little bit about, like, how do you talk to people about whether they should eat organ meats? We always talk about head to toe, honoring the animal, right? So how important is that from your perspective?
Well, I think that we need to be open-minded about what is organ meat. Liver is not the only organ meat.
Right.
So, first, enter like from, the baby pool side, the shallow end. Don't like jump right in and decide to like prepare kidney. Start with something easier. And bone marrow is I think the easiest and most delicious way to go. So
Hmm.
roasted bone marrow is absolutely. Um, sorry, wow, there's caroling outside. I,
Hey,
it's
you're in New York, right?
I
Well,
know.
so that's against every stereotype. In New York, we can get caroling, and
Yes.
it's a beautiful city. So hey, shout out to the carolers.
Indeed,
Hey,
indeed.
just enjoy it. Hopefully, I
Um,
won't take you away from that too long. But go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna go to midnight mass tonight, so,
That'll work.
I will
That'll
get
work.
more of that.
Okay.
Anyway, so I was saying bone marrow is super easy and, it's really easy to make, and it tastes to me like you put salt on top and you roast it, the top gets crispy, the inside is
Hmm.
very, velvety, and the whole
Hmm.
thing tastes like or the whole thing has the texture of crème brûlée. So
Mm.
it is
Mm.
super easy and delicious to eat. It tastes like beefy butter, there's nothing bad about it. So that's a good way to start, and it is incredibly nutritious. So
Okay,
that's like a win right there.
that's right.
Um, yeah, and then remember, fat is an organ, so we're all eating organ meat every day.
Hmm.
So make sure that you're eating whole, unprocessed fat. I know that butter is delicious, tallow is great, but you want to eat I mean, we're all about, or at least I am all about eating whole natural foods. And so that includes fat. Fat, it does not naturally come in a bottle, or wrapped up
Hmm.
in a piece of, foil. So eat fat. And then
Hmm.
you can use butter for flavor, but don't make that the base of your day. So that will get you, that takes you very far right there. And then eggs, it's not, I don't know if you'd call that an organ meat, but it's super, nutritious.
Hmm.
If you struggle, you can also eat like sardines or mackerel or, any little fish, because then you're eating the whole
Hmm.
thing. So you're eating organs right there. Salmon or fish roe in general are also super nutritious. And again, like an egg, you're eating, the whole thing. So you're getting a lot of nutrition there. So there's a lot of ways to go that are very, that are easy, an easy way in. And
That's right.
then you can work your way up to eating liver if you want to. But honestly, these things are also, they're super dense and super nutritious, but that means that you don't need to eat them all the time. You
Hmm.
can rely on
Right.
your appetite. And I do think it's important to expose yourself to these foods, but then your body will send you a craving for it when it needs that thing. So
Mm.
I have had liver. I make liver pate. Periodically, I feel like having it, and then I have
Hmm.
it, and then I don't have it again for months. So, it's not
Cool.
something that you have to eat all the time every day.
Practical approach. Listen to your body. And everybody listening to us today, repeat after me. Saturated fat does not equal cardiovascular disease based on randomized controlled studies. So let that digest, because you're going to leave this podcast. You're going to hear from others who are looking at studies that are not randomized control studies and say, oh, don't eat saturated fat. Saturated fat, based on randomized control studies, is not associated with heart disease. And I think it's really important that we hear that, because that's one of the reasons why we weren't eating a lot of meat, so we want to remove that fear. And again, when you look at those metabolic markers that you would worry about, like your cholesterol, in most cases those things get better. There's a few people where it won't, but in most cases it will. So I really appreciate that. But you did mention butter, so let's talk a little bit about those oils that are recommended on a carnivore diet. And I'll just start with this. Back in the day, and many people are aware, that somebody decided that using cottonseed oil was a good idea. Now, picking cotton was already a problem, so we're going to make it even worse.
Yeah.
We're going to make it even worse and say, so you're not picking it anymore, but I'm going to have you to consume it. So when you hear, and I don't think most people knew Crisco was cottonseed, cottonseed. And somebody decided, oh, we got all these seeds, and from this cotton we've produced, we got to do something with it. Let's turn it into oil. The insanity of that should literally upset you. So, and then we learned that that type of oil increased your risk for cardiovascular disease. It was promoted by the Heart Association, and it was a disaster. So, thankfully, they are saying that that's a bad oil now. We don't see Crisco on the shelves, but we do see other types of oils. So talk a little bit about the oils that we are able to consume, okay, and the oils that we shouldn't consume as much.
Hmm. Well, one, I don't talk about oils because we are not looking for liquid fat, right?
There you go.
I tell people to eat fatty sources of meat.
Mm-hmm.
When you're focusing on like fat and protein, that leads you to sort of eat in unnatural ways. And
Yep.
in the natural world, fat comes with protein. Like, it's dual package. So don't try to split them up, just eat fatty sources of meat. And generally, the front of the animal is the fattier end, and then the back is more lean. So if you eat chuck roast, brisket, all the whole belly, the belly of any animal is where, is usually the fattest part. So all the ribs, all the cuts from the stomach area, and then eating like the oxtails, very fatty. The cheek and the jowl, also very fatty areas. There's like beef bacon that's made from, or on the pig, there's bacon that's made from the cheek, and it's made from the belly. So I would focus on those cuts of meat, and then you can incorporate other leaner cuts as well, as you like them, but try to get a lot more of the fatty cuts of meat. And I, of course, you're going to hear, if you like go on social media, all the carnivores talking about ribeye. Yes, everybody loves a
Mm-hmm.
ribeye, but it is so expensive. So I am not so lucky as to be able to eat a ribeye for every meal of the day. But let me tell you, there are plenty of black carnivores that absolutely are in that position and do that. I do not do that though. So I try to offer more budget options. And honestly, I love chuck roast. It is my favorite cut of meat.
Mm-hmm.
And right now it's $7.99 a pound at Whole Foods, and that's a moderate price in New York City. And
Right.
and that's what I can handle. So I think that is that is a great cut of meat to make your base. So that's fine. Brisket if you like, and so on. So you want to get your fats from the actual meat. And then on top of that, when you're cooking, save your fat. Remember your
Mm-hmm.
grandmother used to have a coffee can or some kind of can on the stove where she pour the fat in and then reuse it and reuse it and reuse it. That's fine. That's what this stuff is for. So save your fat and then continue to use it. Now, I don't like to mix my fats, so, I guess I'm called a little bougie for that. So I have a different pan for my, my bacon grease versus my beef versus the lamb. And that is because these fats have slightly different properties. And so they function a little bit different. You'll find that lard is softer; it doesn't get as hard when it gets cold.
Mhm.
But tallow is much harder. So, but in any event, don't worry about all that. Just, save it together, split it apart. It's fine. The only thing I would say is drain it. So if you pour the fat into like a mesh strainer with like a paper towel on top, so you can strain out the pieces of meat and just let the oil go into the container. And then the next time you cook something, you cook it in that. So, like, I'm making a rib roast for Christmas. And so I'm going to put, a lot of fat into the pan, and I'm going to, brown it on the outside in that. And then I will finish cooking it and do like a reverse sear in the oven. And I expect it is going to be delicious. But I'm using basically leftover fat that I've had from other
Yeah.
occasions. I do occasionally buy like tallow, and so I have that on hand to cook with. But that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah, and when you think about, costs, as you describe, some of the foods that we can eat, it's nice to know that, yes, you can do this, quite affordably. But see, even and it's all about perception. Some of it is real, some people who are vegetarian or vegan, they may find it expensive, depending on what they're purchasing. Some people who eat a meat-based diet may find it expensive, but you have to modify what you're eating based on your budget, and you don't have to go extreme, or organic, grass fed, pasture raised. Your cousin took care of him yesterday before he died. No, you don't have to do all of that. Your cousin don't have to get paid to take care of that animal. It's just you don't have to pay for that. Just get the animal that somebody else took care of, and you'll be fine. I like this idea of hearing things like oxtail, very familiar in the community I grew up in. Being comfortable with bacon, very familiar to all of us, I would say. So it's nice to know that, yes, when it comes to culture, a lot of the foods that you already eat are actually totally uh, aligned with what we're considering when we consider carnivore. And I think that's important because a lot of times I don't want to take people out of their comfort zone. And I think that we eat more of the things we're comfortable with and less of the things that we shouldn't eat that are part of that culture, because our culture should help us to have a future with our family, not a dietary plan that takes us away from our family prematurely. I just don't want to see that happen. So, one of my missions as I teach metabolic health to the masses is to help people live longer so that they can be here longer and make that oxtail soup, whatever concoction, and enjoy that and pass that to the next generation. I know the holidays are here, so we got to get a little drink going. And before we talk about alcohol, let's just talk about regular beverages. And obviously, I got some water that I've been sipping on today. I had a little coffee earlier today. And when I think about coffee, for example, I know carnivores sometimes drink coffee, right? So, but I also know that's not from an animal. So it sounds like there are certain rules we can break depending on our particular situation. And I think people need to hear about beverages that are okay, not okay. And again, I even hate to say it that way because your tone has already been one of, listen, we can't have all these hard, fast rules, right? So I think people need to hear a little bit about what can I actually drink. We already know it's not apple juice, right? We know
Yeah.
that. But talk a little bit about when you talk to your community, what do people consider acceptable beverages for a budding carnivore?
So ideally, water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sparkling or still, either one is fine.
Mm.
But there are plenty of people that, have essentially said, I am not going to stop drinking coffee. You have to pry it out of my cold, dead hands. So there is certainly a huge portion of the carnivore community that drinks coffee. So everyone understands that this is a plant food. So, we're not trying to pretend. We've just accepted that. I have drunk coffee. I have also not drunk coffee. Right now, I'm in a no coffee stage, and I would suggest that you try a time with no coffee, because the reason why I ultimately stopped it is I noticed it greatly increases my anxiety level.
Mm.
So you might be interested to see how you do off of coffee, but it does have a pretty big impact. And then there's a woman who's part of the Black Carnivore community. She was posting about, she tracked her numbers, and when she gave up coffee, her triglycerides dropped significantly, her blood pressure normalized, her cholesterol dropped 100 points, and she lost 20 pounds in 3 months. So,
Mm.
coffee does have an impact. But
Mhm.
that being said, people do it. Now, if you're going to do it, ideally you want to do it black, but there are some people who must have it with cream. So then,
Mhm.
you have it with cream. And then ideally, that's all you put in it. But then there are people who must have their sweetener. So
That's
then
right.
people add sweetener. So, it's up to you. Like I said, carnivore is not a club. There's no card. There's no, you do you. But you got to think about what your goals are and whether these things are going to help you achieve your goals. So if you were trying to, to cure cancer, then you got to stay really
Right.
strict, and
That's
that's it.
right.
But if
Yeah.
you are at your goal weight and you've achieved your health goals, then, you have some more flexibility, and that's kind of up to you. So in the Black Carnivore community, the way that we approach it is, there's three buckets. One is strict carnivore, where you're really just eating from the animal kingdom, and that's it. You may have dairy, or you may choose not to have dairy. It kind of depends on the individual and their health. Then there's moderate carnivore, where you would include coffee, herbs and spices, and low sugar fruits like avocados
Mhm.
and olives. And then there is relaxed carnivore, where you would also include artificial sweeteners and maybe some vegetables. Like if you go out to a restaurant and there's,
Mhm.
you get a side, you might have it then. So, people might consider that more like ketovore, maybe. So, so that is a spectrum there. And then, I encourage you to decide where you're going to be. Some people are strict all week and then relax on the weekends. Some people are
Mhm.
strict for breakfast and lunch, and then they're relaxed for dinner. It's kind of up to you how you want to do it. But again, you want to make those things, you want to choose how you do it. Make sure that it aligns with your goals. So if you have some significant goals that you're trying to accomplish, you need to be more strict.
Mhm.
And then you've of course got to balance strictness with sustainability. So
Right.
if you cannot make it through life without your cup of coffee, your perfect cup of coffee, then have it, because
That's right.
being able to stay on the program mostly and go longer is more important than being perfect for one day. So
Cool.
yeah, that's how I think about it. But
I think it's
generally speaking, water and coffee
yeah.
are the two main things.
I heard
There are
and we heard
mhm,
broths, right? And we know broths
broth,
because you mentioned that
right?
earlier. And
Yeah.
tea, what about tea?
I find more people have problems with tea than coffee.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know,
Mhm.
there's something about tea. Maybe it's like mold, or, they use
Mhm.
a lot of, chemicals and stuff. But,
Mhm.
theoretically, tea is fine. But definitely, I see people have problems with it. And then artificial, well, like diet soda, or the flavored sparkling water that's unsweetened seems to be okay. But when you start having like Crystal Lights and
Mhm.
Zevias and stuff like that, some people can do that and it's okay, but other people, it triggers cravings. It keeps them from losing weight. So you got to be really careful with that stuff. And generally, I would say, leave that aside.
Okay, when we're trend, I this is proof that I listened to your YouTube channel. I did see. I remember at some point I heard you talk about people who are transitioning off of coffee, and I think you talked about L-tyrosine, and that could be helpful. Is that something you guys generally put out there? Say, hey, if you're transitioning, maybe mention that real quick before we move on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No one needs to suffer through a caffeine headache. So I use
Mhm,
L-tyrosine. A supplement. You can get it at GNC, Vitamin Shop, or any place like that. And you take it for a couple of days on an empty stomach, in the morning before breakfast, and then before lunch, and then in
mhm,
the afternoon if you feel like a little headache breaking through. And within a few days, you will be past it, and you won't need it anymore. So, that's the way I use it, and I always keep some on hand. And I heard that like astronauts or like I don't know pilots use it to help promote
mhm,
like focus.
mhm.
So it kind of helps give you what coffee does for that few days.
Cool, love it. Ironically, as I was finishing up in my office today, I was watching a brief documentary about on YouTube about a Canadian plane that had gone down and how the pilots were able to figure out how to land it without two engines on a commercial airliner, which was probably the first time that's ever happened. Maybe they had a little tyrosine that day. Maybe because they figured it out. Definitely worth a look. Um,
I
I
guess if your
also
life is at stake, you can figure out a lot of
you're gonna
things.
figure out some things. That's right. Isn't that amazing? We have a great computer up here. Um, so let's briefly talk about the things that we season our food with, and maybe just condiments in general. But um, I do have kind of some black charcoal seasoning in my house. So it's basically charcoal and salt. So both of those are, not from animals, but I hear you talk a lot about and other carnivores, salt's okay. And it's not really from an animal, but it just sounds like that's okay. So just give a general sense of what seasonings are considered acceptable. Obviously, there's different levels of carnivore. I think I'm in that third basket where, I kind of eat one vegetable and sometimes I don't eat any. And I feel good because I didn't really think I was there. Yes, I feel better now.
You're
But
there. You're
I'm,
already
I'm I'm
there.
already there. That's right.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about. And by the way, guys who are
And in
listening,
fact, the
charcoal.
relaxed carnivore category
Yeah.
basically includes anyone who's like clean keto.
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
actually
Right.
a huge
It's like a
category.
barrage. So I'm definitely
Yeah.
there. So I'll stick there for a little bit and experiment. So charcoal is great because, when you think about if you go into my other podcast, Protecting Your Nest, I have the acronym and the nest and the rope. But the rope is the P is for pollutants and toxins and charcoal helps to remove that. So because people say, what are you doing consuming charcoal? It doesn't make sense, but it actually helps to remove toxins. That's why they can actually get away with making seasonings. But again, going back to salt, like, so is salt the main thing? And if you go into the other category, is it really a big deal either way? Is it more about how your body feels?
Well, I mean, salt is it's a mineral, right? And
Hmm.
it is a required substance in our, or sodium is a required substance in our body. So
That's right.
you cannot not have sodium. Where you
Right.
get your sodium, I guess, salt it contains like what 40% sodium and then other stuff. So I suppose
Hmm.
you could get your sodium from other sources, but salt is the easiest way to get it, and it is very tasty. It definitely enhances the taste of food. So
That's right.
we are team salt. We love salt. We go salt, get it. People always ask me what kind should I get, and I say on carnivore you consume a lot of salt. So I go through a pretty sizable container each month. So you're going to get all the salts. Don't worry about which kind, get them all. Try
That's
different
right.
kinds. I don't have any
Don't
preference.
matter.
Just
That's
make
right.
sure it doesn't have like dextrose or MSG or
Hmm.
sweetener or something like that in it. And so whatever kind of salt is fine. And then I've never had black salt, but that sounds cool. I'd love to try
Hmm.
that. And then
It's
there uh-huh,
Yeah, I was
go
just
ahead.
saying it's really charcoal seasoning is really good. Yeah,
Nice.
definitely
I'll have
try
to
it,
try
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as far as other seasonings go, some people have them, some people don't. I for a while took them out, and then I've really kind of lost my taste for them. So
Mhm.
I don't have a strict rule that I can't have them. It's just that I don't want to.
Okay.
So occasionally, like I make what is it, like Jamaican curry oxtails,
Mhm.
and I like it, but I also find the spice to be too much.
Right,
Like it's
right,
just too
right.
much. So, so you will find a lot of carnivores don't use any spices. They really just use salt, even pepper. Like people kind of just stop using this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And, it's fine, but if you wanna keep using it, that's fine. The only thing I would say is just make sure that you look through your spice. If you're getting a mix of spices, that there's no sugar, or, other
Right.
kind of chemicals in there, and most of them do have that, so you have to look at every single
That's
bottle.
great.
Don't just look at the front, you have to look at the ingredients.
Yeah, become a little bit of a detective, and I think it's mind blowing for most people who are haven't started this journey, rather it's low carb, keto, carnivore, to imagine just having salt. But man, when you get all that toxic, hyper palatable stuff out of your life, you regain the basic functions that your taste buds had in the first place, and everything. You just become more sensitive to it, and you can taste things, and you don't need the things that you normally would need. So when somebody's trying to tempt you with a caramel cake, it doesn't really impress you like it did before, because you're only thinking that's going to be way too sweet. I'm not going to be able to eat that, even if I wanted to have a day when I was not carnivore. So and another thing I wanted to mention, particularly emphasizing this need for salt, and that's why I wanted to ask that question, because I think people need to have a why and understand why they do what they do, right? So some people are aware that if you eat the diet where you have a lot of starch, sugar, and things like that, you're going to have to make a lot of insulin, and too much insulin or hyperinsulinemia leads to salt retention in the kidneys. Well, if you don't have that hyperinsulinemia and you don't have a lot of too much insulin, you actually get rid of salt. So if you're carnivore, keto, and even low carb, you have to replace salt more than the average person. And that's why a lot of people who go on these types of dietary patterns, they lose a lot of water weight first, and those who eat a lot of starchy, sugary foods, they hold on to a lot of water. So I think that's one of the kind of good side effects, in that since we get rid of salt, you have to salt your food and it tastes delicious. So now we can have salt and fat. That's a beautiful combination. For anybody that don't know, that tastes good. Now you know. So I do want to go back to the dairy question. And I know in my training with nutrition and functional medicine, I remember talking about the things that are, allergens, right? So most people are aware of gluten, and some people are aware that eggs and dairy, which kind of fit the animal kingdom model, are, allergens. Soy, peanuts, and fish, shellfish, maybe tree nuts. These are all allergens. And one of the reasons why the carnivore diet is so effective is that you eliminate the major sources of allergens from your diet. So you could imagine that your body's like, thank you. Finally, you're not giving me things. Because a lot of times, going back to that cabbage, and the cabbage may have been
Mm.
for a different reason. It may have been just the, lectins and phytates and oxalates or whatever. There's things in plants that protect the plants but don't help us. And so maybe it was that. But at the end of the day, sometimes we have things in our food that can harm us. And of those allergens I've mentioned, maybe eggs and dairy are the only ones that kind of fit in this carnivore category. So my question, I know we talked about this a little bit, but what's been your experience? Not just, I mean, I know personally you've had some issues with allergies you've shared on your channel. talk a little bit about if a carnivore should or shouldn't have dairy or eggs in their diet.
I think that's something that you actually have to test. Don't just make the assumption that it's fine. Just test it, and it doesn't have to be a long test. It can be, a week or 2 weeks, and then, you reintroduce it and see what the effect is. Um, but I do have to say that from my experience of what I see, almost everybody does better without it.
Hmm.
So, so you kind of have to decide. But the way I see it, dairy is it's a growth agent. It's ultimately designed to take
Hmm.
a baby cow into a full cow. And once you are an adult human, you don't want to grow. Like, anything that causes things to grow is a bad thing. So there's no reason we should be
Mm-mm.
consuming dairy. Like, it's just not. There's no reason for it. So, when people are trying to lose weight, like, that's the opposite of what a growth agent
Hmm.
is doing.
Right. Right.
And if people have autoimmune stuff, like, that's not helpful. Or if you're
Right.
concerned about cancer and, out of control growth, you don't want a growth agent.
That's
So
right.
there are so many reasons, like, not to have dairy. So, but again, there are people who are just like, I must have it in my coffee. I must have it, blah, blah, blah. So, you kind of have to decide. But when I work with people and like they kind of hit a stall and the weight loss isn't moving, like, taking out the dairy is usually like the next step, and it frees things up.
Cool. And that makes a
And
lot of
also
sense.
dairy has, I wanted to say dairy has,
Yeah.
what is it, that substance, oxytocin maybe, that, that is to promote the bonding between the mother and child. And so you get this, like, I mean, it's like a drug effect.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of
Absolutely.
a drug effect to all foods that have dairy, including cheese, ice cream, and milk and so on. So, some people can abuse dairy for that reason as well.
Yeah, and I've delivered a lot of babies over the years. I don't know if I told you that, but I'm a family
Mm-mm.
doctor, just like others, like Dr. Kim Berry. But I delivered a lot of babies, so I had a chance to be very involved in deliveries, and yeah, that is a hormone that is part of the body, and it has a lot of effects on the reproductive system, dealing with lactation and things like that. So, but it does have other effects on behavior and other things. And I think at the end of the day, we don't want to have hormones in our body that can have effects that should occur at other times in our lives, and they're occurring now in a stage in our life we don't need it. So I think that's really important. And so thank you for bringing that up, because I think we don't think about it. We think about it in a different way, but nobody's thinking about it the way you're talking about it. So thank you for that as well. So I do want to touch a little bit on alcohol. Don't blame it on the alcohol, a day. Okay. So don't blame it on the alcohol. So when it comes to alcohol, in my training with functional medicine and nutrition, it's just essentially it's a toxin. Like, your body stops everything and says, okay, let's get rid of this toxin, and we're going to stop everything while we're trying to remove that toxin. So patients will come to me and say, doctor, I've heard in the news that a little wine or a little alcohol a day is really good for your heart. And I'll say, yeah, the study did show that, but it's not a health food. It's not a health food. So if you're a drinker and you want to consume alcohol and continue, there may be alcohols that make sense if you don't overconsume them. Maybe one glass for a female, a couple for guys. But at the end of the day, it's not a health food. So having said that, that's also something that's not from an animal. So what's the word on the street about alcohol in the carnivore community?
I also tell people this is not a health product.
Okay,
So,
good.
it's not, I'm not advising you to take it.
Right.
And I've done, quite a bit of reading up on alcohol, and yeah, there are, some studies that will show that it is healthy, but there's 10 others that show that it's
Mhm.
a problem,
Right.
and those studies get a lot of play because this is what the information people want to hear, and the
Right.
press is like, great, this makes it for a great title and this will sell papers. But there is a tremendous amount of studies to show that it is harmful all the time, everywhere, for everybody, and
Yeah.
all over the world. So
Yeah.
there's no benefit. um, you will always benefit by not consuming alcohol.
Yeah, and again, we don't wanna be boring and, mess up the
Mhm.
podcast here, but but at the end of we just wanna be honest. So again, for those who
So if you're
consume.
going to have
Yeah.
alcohol, you want it to be as low, low sugar and low carb as possible. So if
Yes.
you're going to have wine, choose a dry wine. Don't get your Moscato, or like the sweeter like rosés and stuff. You want to, you want to go with the much drier wines. And
That's
then
right.
if you're going to have hard liquor, just make sure you're getting one that. Now there's so many that are flavored and stuff, and
Mhm.
so don't get any of
Mhm.
those. Just get, your
That's right.
straight, vodka, rum, or whatever. And when you use mixers, a lot of people are having the hard seltzer. That'll work. So
Mhm.
if you're just using seltzer, remember, like, tonic has a lot of sugar in it, so don't use that. And even, I mean, I guess you could use diet soda. You may have some digestive effects
Right.
if
Right.
you're having the artificial sweetener. So I would say don't do that. Really, just have the, like, scotch and soda or something like that. And then the other thing to remember, this is incredibly important, is that alcohol hits you so much harder when you're a carnivore.
Yes.
I
So
don't know
glad.
why, but I have seen people get wasted,
Mhm.
off of like half a beer. So, the like you will it's ridiculously small amounts of alcohol will knock you out. So it's really important because you don't want to end up with alcohol poisoning. So, you want to be really careful about how much you're having. And then, the hangovers can also be epic, like multi-day hangovers. So, I think it's hard to have a regular drinking habit while on carnivore, and make progress towards your health goals.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's it is really interesting. So I don't drink a lot of alcohol. I will have a I will celebrate the New Year's, but because I have I don't drink much. I already have issues with alcohol tolerance. Now you go to a guy that's already keto, you really you're gonna struggle. And you're right, ketosis lowers your tolerance. And your body really stores carbohydrates, as glycogen. And when you're in ketosis, there's very low levels of it. So low levels of glycogen mean that there are fewer substances in your body to absorb alcohol, believe it or not. So carbohydrates can actually reduce blood alcohol levels. So it's kind of like, something that's there, when you have the alcohol effect, you're going to have its effect on glycogen and ketones. So just keep that in mind and when you're thinking about this. But the bottom line is you should be careful if you're, uh, in ketosis or a carnivore and you want to blame it on the alcohol. Well, you will absolutely be able to blame it on alcohol because it's going to have this greater effect because of what I just described. So that's
Mhm.
really cool. I also, you mentioned something earlier, and let's see. I think I wanted to touch a little bit on two more things. One is the artificial sweeteners that you mentioned earlier. I tend to tell people who are just doing keto, use stevia, monk fruit. I personally don't tolerate sugar alcohols at all. So if I use erythritol or something in that sugar alcohol category, it really is, not good. Um, so what's the word on the street about sugar alcohols? That clearly that's some people in that middle category, maybe in the third category, may still consume those things. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, sugar alcohols, I think kind of taste the best, but
Hmm.
have the worst effects
Right.
on the stomach.
Yes.
So, I have occasionally tried them, and it's been like deeply regretful. But there's a lot of different kinds of artificial sweeteners out there, and different people seem to have different tolerance levels to different ones. So it's hard to say, like, categorically, this type of person is going to do better with this kind of sweetener and that kind with that kind. So it's kind of up to you in terms of flavor and taste. But I do find, that using artificial sweeteners keeps the taste for sweet alive, and so you will want more sweet when you're using it. So, a lot of carnivores, uh, you know, don't use it,
Hmm.
or are seeking to, phase it out of their diet.
Hmm.
I'm not a fan. I don't encourage you to use artificial sweeteners. If you must in your coffee, I get it. And there are some carnivore desserts that people make.
Hmm.
Surprisingly, like if you have dairy, cheesecakes, there's
Hmm.
a lot of things that you can make that are quite good. And some things don't even need sweetener because, cream, I mean, once your palate is cleansed and more sensitized, you can taste the sweet in a dairy, and it doesn't
Hmm.
require a sweetener. But so there are various kinds of carnivore desserts, and some people add some sweetener to them, various kinds of puddings and
Hmm.
cheese kind of things. So there are things that people use, but I generally don't encourage it, because from my experience, what I see is that people just consume more and more of it. So
Hmm. Yeah.
you know
Yeah, it's hard. And I'll be honest, I don't think about steak at home when I'm not consuming steak, although I enjoy steak. But I do think about my keto friendly desserts when I'm not at home. And it may be safe to eat, right? But I don't want to be thinking about food. So I don't feel like I'm, a processed food addicted person, but I'm gonna tell you, I think about it a little more than I'm comfortable with. So I think you have to be really careful. And if it's going to trigger you to want those things, it's probably best to avoid those things. So the other thing I wanted to kind of wrap us up with is this ideal of mayonnaise. And it's I was sitting with my father-in-law watching Undercover Brother. Okay, you remember that?
yes.
Oh, and for those who haven't seen Undercover Brother,
Oh my
shout
god.
out to Eddie Griffin. Shout out to Eddie Griffin. And he
You
should
brought me
be
way
that's
back.
right. He probably ain't worth no more than a couple of million. He should be worth 200 million just for that movie. I'm saying that because it's, to me, it's like it brings in a little culture stuff, some themes. It's got Dave Chappelle in there. They all acting crazy. But the funny thing about that movie is this mayonnaise issue, right? And they're like, people of color don't eat mayonnaise. And I thought that was interesting because, and then I thought about it and I thought about it and I said, "What? That can't be true," because, and then I thought, well, maybe it's that Miracle Whip versus mayonnaise question. Because Miracle Whip, which is nothing but fructose corn syrup, by the way, if you look at the ingredients, is sweeter. And maybe it's that issue. So I'm not sure if there's a thing with communities of color and mayonnaise, but I thought that was a funny little thing they did in that movie. So for those who haven't seen it, just go to Netflix or Amazon Prime or something and check it out. But so having said that, I know that mayonnaise also is something that uses eggs. I know the oils are probably garbage oils, but and vinegar and various things. So where is mayonnaise on the carnivore spectrum?
So some people have it, but we really, really discourage it because it's made
Hmm.
of seed oils.
Right.
Um, I have to say that is the one thing that I really do miss.
Mm.
I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm not black. I did like mayonnaise. But I like the texture of it, and it's a good, it's a good texture to like scoop up fat. And I think on the carnivore diet, like on keto, there's like lots of you can still have a lot of carby things that allow you that soak up a lot of fat. And so if you're trying
Hmm.
to increase the amount of fat that you're eating, a piece of broccoli can actually absorb and hold a lot of butter, but a
Hmm.
piece of steak or a burger, there's a total limit to how much fat can like come on each piece
Hmm.
of burger. And so things like mayo allow you to carry more fat. And I think that's
Mm.
why, I kind of miss that texture. But the seed oils for me, like I respond so negatively to the seed oils like right away that I can really notice a difference. And from the people that I work with, like there is a difference. Now if they'll
Hmm.
have every now and then they'll have a deviled egg made with mayo, it's fine. But
Hmm.
as an everyday thing, I would not do it. And then
That's right.
I know I was like scrolling through Instagram one time and I saw this picture of somebody frying a steak in a pan with mayo. And I was like, I have no words. This is like the most disgusting and horrible thing I have ever seen. And how can you ruin a perfectly good steak with mayo? Like, and I don't even know how you get to the point where you think that's the way you should do it. I
Yeah,
don't know. I'm like I don't know who taught you to cook. Like, where did you even get this idea?
I
So
know.
that was really gross.
That is gross, and,
Yeah.
maybe that's the part of you that is culturally relevant, that disgust that you had, that disgust, so Eddie Griffin must have, put that in your head, so that's excellent. I'm really happy we had a chance to chat, because I think that there are people out there who, first of all, need to know that this is okay to do carnivore. They also need to know that there may be people out there that can hold their hand and guide them, and you're one of those people. So I think for anybody listening to this episode, please consider uh, getting some exposure to the community that A Day has created. So maybe as we wrap up A Day, you can share any final words you have, but most importantly, how can people get some more education around carnivore in the platforms that you have out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So just give it a try. Come check out my page. You'll get my Instagram page. I post a lot of pictures of food and also before and after pictures of other Black carnivores in the Black community who have had, just amazing success. I just actually interviewed a woman today. I don't know. I'm going to get it out by the end of January, but her A1C went from 12.3 to now 7.5, and
Yep.
she's still
Yep.
on her way down.
That's right.
So, it's like pretty stunning some of the effects that you can see. So come check out my Instagram. I'm at Black Carnivore there. I have a Facebook group. It is called Black Carnivore. And I've also started monthly challenges where I take you through 21 days, give you a meal plan, recipes, workouts and a lot of support and encouragement, and you're with a group, and it really helps people to, stay consistent and accountable on their program. So join my challenge. That is another way. Send me a DM, and I'll get you all of the information. Send me a DM on Instagram or on Facebook. On Facebook, my name is Ede Fox. It's spelled EDEFOX. So you can find me on Facebook that way. And yeah, get started. Don't wait. Why would you put off feeling great, looking great, being healthier? Just start now.
I love it. Sounds like a great commercial, and it's so true. And I can vouch for A Day because my 2 weeks ago, I think I released the episode of my podcast with Gwen Butler, and just like your example, she went from 13 to 6 point, or actually, I think she went to 5.8 with her A1C. Now she did it with keto, but the point of it is she was on insulin for 11 years and got
Wow.
off of insulin within 30 to 40 days. That's that should be headline breaking news on CNN, but yet we don't hear these stories. Instead, we hear about uh, things that are not as helpful. So thank you, A-Day, for that example, and most importantly, thank you for spending some time with me today. I know you've had a busy day, and this is a holiday, day before the holiday. So I think we're going to end this conversation. And I think for all those who are listening, and I'll probably get this episode out fairly quickly, so it'll still be during the holiday time. I want to wish everybody who's enjoying this episode a wonderful, safe holiday season with your families. Thank you for coming to Can We Talk? And we're going to keep having these conversations with thought leaders and hopefully some testimonials. Those same people with those A1Cs, we're going to bring them to the channel as well. So thank you, Ede. And for all those listening, thank you again. And we will do this again at the next episode. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.